My literature review is called STEAM versus STEM: Why Should Music Be Considered a Core Subject Area? The purpose of this literature review was to define how music and arts are an important asset to a well-rounded STEM education, supporting the integration of the arts to the STEM model to make it STEAM. Ah, there it goes. We already know from extensive documented previous research over the last century that there are many intrinsic and extrinsic benefits to participating in a music program, from social development to higher academic achievement, language acquisition, development of moral character, maintaining mental health, and improved ability for innovation, to just name a few from the top of my head. Despite the extensive research, music and arts education proponents are still having to constantly argue and fight to keep music and arts education as a core part of the curriculum. And if they want, ooh, sorry, too soon, if they want support for the recognition of music and arts as part of the STEAM model, then they're going to have to find more research that not only discusses all the benefits that arts education provides to the STEAM model, but what factors are barriers are in the way of preventing students from being able to gain everything they can out of the arts model. So our Brown, Reardon, and Merrill describe reasons for this national push for accelerated learning in STEM fields to be coming from a concern for all these STEM fields opening up and not having enough trained, educated individuals and students to fill these careers and fields in the STEM section. So they're wanting to better prepare students for advanced education in the, mathematics, science, technology, and engineering, but they're leaving out important arts sections of it. Souza and Pilecki say experts in these fields are saying that the arts are an integral part to their success and that they steal for scientific uses all the time from what they call 21st century skills that can be gained from the arts, such as critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, initiative, communications, self direction, and collaboration, which makes the arts an important asset to a well rounded STEAM education. Although there is countless research affirming these positive correlations in student achievement, both emotionally and academically, music educators are still trying to develop research to further the fight to keep it as part of the core curriculum. Some researchers, though, like Darrell and Mendel, argue that there is a danger with fighting for music and arts educations in the political arena, and that the secondary benefits of participating in music and the joy of creating art and learning and doing music for music's sake um, is going to become endangered because lawmakers and policymakers are going to want to take it and put standardized curriculum that can be documented through data driven, which is hard to do in the arts field. But if proponents of music and arts education can find research that supports using data, how those fields benefit without the need to standardize the fields of art and music, that would further help their cause in adding arts to the STEM model. So my research questions for this literature review were: how does participation in a music program affect students' overall competencies? What non-music factors act as barriers that affect recruitment and enrollment of students in music programs? And what non-music factors act as barriers that affect students' retention in music programs? The next step to continue research is knowing the benefits of student involvement in these music and arts programs, and then determining what is it that is affecting students' recruitment, enrollment, and retention in these programs. For my theoretical framework, I use Galvin and Young to support the idea of curriculum theory, and Bucock and Prideaux for equity theory. So Galvin and Young described curriculum theory as a broad field of curriculum studies rooted in the theory of the development of curriculum, and that it is both historical in context by how it analyzes curriculum and how it is a way of viewing current educational curriculum and policy decisions. And I've used that to determine the importance and influence of arts education with their overall competencies and academic abilities, and whether it belongs alongside STEM subjects as part of the integrated core curriculum using this theoretical framework. But I also leaned more on Bucock and Predow's article about equity theory to discuss how the inequities that are involved in arts education and how it's not available to everyone, and that there are barriers that get in the way for students, is something to also be examined in this paper. So I have the use of both theoretical frameworks. My methodology used several databases. I used EBSCO to search with ERIC, Academic Search Complete, and Educational Source. And I use keywords such as music education, competencies, academic achievement, enrollment, recruitment, retention. And you can see in my chart how, as I added more filters on, it narrowed down my searches. And then I took some of these searches and did it individually in ERIC, individually in academic search, individually in education source, and then all together to see if there was anything I was missing. But I also found it really beneficial to use bibliographical referencing to find a lot of my sources, and I went back into EBSCO to verify those sources and read through all the relevant abstracts, book chapters, theses, articles, and results in sections of papers and research studies using these methods. And then going on to my first research question, how does participation in a music program affect overall competencies and academic abilities? Well, the largest defense for the retention of music education in public school curriculum is how there's so much considerable research demonstrating the link between student academic achievement and their involvement in music, from Catterall to Catterall and Chaplow and Iguanaga, Elpis and April, Elpis, Fitzpatrick, Kinney, Forsyth, Kivett, Nixa, Sousa, and Pilecki, Stewart, Wallach. All of these people had somewhere in their research study academic success as a marker for music education. And then Fee, Shaw, Sousa, Pilecki, and Zhu did more examination in the overall competencies such as moral character, innovation ability, humanistic quality, intellectual development, and mental health. And it just supports how their overall competencies interact with regard to their human development, and while it also enhances their cognitive growth, their emotional growth, and the psychomotor pathways in the brain, music is one of the few activities you can do where you're enacting both sides of your brain to learn. And these same researchers also found that the intrinsic and extrinsic value of music education in academic and social development of students have positive correlations with engaging the whole brain and improving long-term memory. And through the development of cognitive growth, it just makes teaching more interesting and reduces stress while promoting creativity and development. My second research question, what non-music factors act as barriers that affect recruitment and enrollment of students into music programs? So researchers have discovered that enrollment in music programs often highly corresponds with socioeconomic status, the SES. It is one of the top predictors of whether or not students will enroll in music education programs or not. And researchers such as Elpis, Fitzpatrick, Kenny, Laura, Kleindenst, Mixa, Murphy, they all have found social economic status and academic achievement to be the top two indicators of whether or not students will enroll in academic success. But they have also discovered, McCarthy found that students with higher SES participate longer. Clendenst said that socioeconomic status is more reliable in predicting retention and enrollment in music education. And Wolf said that few students with a low socioeconomic background even sign up at all. And that further perpetuates that lower socioeconomic students are less likely to enroll in curriculum and music curriculum, and we need to focus on that as a large barrier to reach that population of students. But family and student motivation is also a factor that contributes to whether or not students choose to enroll or not, as well as their attitude about music learning in general and their perceptions of what the class are going to be. The last research question was, what non-music factors act as barriers that affect students' retention in music programs? So Kinney and Clendenst are among several researchers who found that retention in music programs is often predicted by academic achievement and socioeconomic status. Woody and NG and Hartwig researched the close link between student retention to music program and their motivations, and as well as their relationship to the teachers, showing that students don't want to learn from teachers that they don't like. Albert, Elpis, Abril, Fitzpatrick, Kinney, and Philip all found funding as another big indicator of retention. If students can't afford they inevitably leave the program. So that's also a large barrier as well. Korenbaum and Marshall, Kinney, and Phillips also found that family structure isn't a big predictor of retention. If the parents don't want them to be involved in the program or for whatever reason, then they won't be involved in the program. And Woody and Emmerman also discussed how the development of a strong program structure fosters learning at the highest level while providing a support and safe environment, which also helps in retention, that program culture and your leadership as a teacher in that program. I discussed briefly in the literature review the matter of ethics and how the goal of music educators and district leaders is to make enrollment in music programs as accessible and feasible for all students as possible. Susan Pilecki also said that schools have an obligation to expose all students to the arts at the youngest age that they possibly can, and to consider if a fundamental curriculum area and consider it a fundamental curriculum area and they have an ethical responsibility to remove any controllable barriers that suppress students and whether or not they're able to be involved in these programs. So in conclusion, the positive attributes, all of them, everything that was mentioned by these researchers of music and arts education that enhances these students' overall competencies in regards to human development, moral character, humanistic quality, mental health, intellectual development, and the innovation ability, while enhancing their growth of cognitive, emotional, and psychomotor pathways, is super important to be mentioning in research when we're talking about adding arts as a curricular part of the core curriculum of the STEM model. And because of all the positive attributes that it brings, especially the overall development in academics and 21st century skills and the emotional social learning aspect, which is important in some fields, I agree with Susan Pilecki that all students should be exposed to the arts, and it should be considered a core curriculum subject for all students in our classrooms. Here are my references, and thank you so much.